Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, a podcast about leaving self-doubt in the dust, punching fear in the face, and taking bold action toward your biggest dreams. I'm Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to the Permission to Kick Ass podcast. With me today is Jon Reyes. Say hi, Jon.
Hey. Sorry, happy to be on here. I'm like, we're just in the middle of a conversation, and I was like, oh shoot, it's time to record.
Oh yeah, it's time to record. Here we are. We're live to us, but when you guys hear it, it'll be recorded. So tell us a little bit about what you do, Jon.
So very similar to you, Angie, kind of been immersed in this direct response copy world since 2013 now, and something at one point, I realized I could never get away from. It's kind of a way I think, it's kind of a way I operate. And the more I connect with, fellow direct response writers in our space, the more I realize I'm completely normal. So yeah, right now it's the same thing. I focus mainly in the influencer marketing niche, whether it's the gurus, the brand names of the world, the Tony Robbins, or if it's a personality based brand such as, an example is health supplements with a certain face behind it. That's where I specialize. And, nowadays overseeing, playing copy chief role, consultant, strategist, but the ultimate, bread and butter will always be copy, whether it's dialing in existing stuff or creating new stuff.
I think that's great. Well, and for everybody listening to the show that doesn't and hasn't heard me rant about copywriters before, first of all, shame on you. I've given this rant before, but as a refresher, copywriters, I just happen to know a lot. We are sales writers in a nutshell. And so I was kind of chuckling when Jon was describing it as like, when you get around other copywriters and discover you're not quite as weird as you felt like you were. Yeah, we all have this different filter, I think, that we see the world through, and it's kind of like, ooh, that's a good hook. Ooh, that's a good angle. Oh, that would make a great story for an email. And it's just like, we naturally think like that. And other people are like, why are you cataloging this story as we're having a conversation? That's such a weird thing to do, but other copywriters get it.
Absolutely.
So we were talking a little bit about, before the call, we were talking a little bit about just kind of the journey to get here where you are and what that's been like. Do you want to go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, something more recent is we were just talking about, even no matter how much experience, it's not just, I'm pretty sure professional athletes go through this stuff all the time, is, the fear or the self-doubt, even when it's, looking to create a home run campaign, whether it's like a professional athlete going to play a game they trained, their whole life for. But, for me, it was, entrepreneurship is not in my blood. It was a journey of, growing up in kind of a high crime rate area, very minority populated, which is, to each their own, whether or not that's a correlation, but, gangs and all that stuff. So for the most part, I was raised by a military dad, and it was, take care of your body and mind, focus on your school, don't hang around with the wrong crowd, and just, make yourself food, like make yourself TV dinners later when you get home. So it was, the people in our neighborhood, we didn't know what business was to an extent. We were the role models, and the people who were considered successful to us were, you had a gun and a badge, or you were high ranked in the military. You were like a firefighter, or like in the high up there in the medical field. So, long story short, it was kind of when I used to be really, really introverted in middle school. And I would have weird hobbies of writing poetry and making movies about random stuff with my brother. And I guess that kind of prepared me, drawing. So, it kind of prepared me for the entrepreneurial freelance world. But, it was when I hit high school, it was, okay, now's my chance to come out of my shell. I got a girlfriend. I'm going to be the cool guy. And at some point I kind of got mixed up. I never really thought about the future, and I was, wanted to make up for my introverted years. And then over time I got mixed up in the pitfalls of our area, which was partying, the wild crowd, the rough crowd, drugs and all that stuff I'm not proud of. By the time it's like a 16-year-old diving in that world, it could definitely be detrimental. But, just to kind of sum that up, it was 3 or 4 years in that world until I got clean. And then my dad's like, man, you messed up. Either you join the military or you finish college. And I was at San Diego State University. So it was the whole show of, low self-esteem. Like, I don't belong here. I was immersed in like being in the spotlight and high highs and low lows. These people are smarter than me. And I have no direction. And it was basically counting all the reasons why I wasn't good enough to finish school. And to kind of get over that, I got obsessed about, let me just plow through all the books about improving communication skills, learning to break out of your shell, self-esteem building through shedding your comfort zone and, physical challenges. And it was about almost a decade-long journey, but I kept noticing constant improvements all around, became a more well-rounded, more, self-reliant, self-confident person. And that's kind of what brought me to, this niche, and where I'm at now I was like, okay, I graduated college. Cool. My dad was shocked, and he's like, okay,
thanks, Dad.
Live your life. Yeah. It was the same old thing. You're like, well, you could have been like a federal agent right now if you knew what you wanted to do. Like, well, there's always something that could have been better. Mm-hmm. But that's just to kind of like nip that in the bud. It was kind of the whole thing of, I hate the 9 to 5. I'm going to now take my obsession and passion for personal growth into the obsession and passion for entrepreneurship. And that's pretty much how I ended up as a copywriter. Long story. Summing that, like, I know it's like kind of a timeline journey, but that's pretty much how I got my start. And
I think you did a damn fine job condensing 20 years into like just a few minutes. That's not an easy feat.
I got better at it the more I saw counselors and stuff. I was like, I'm kidding. But there's some times where it's like, tell me how you were in your childhood. And over time, I'm like, let me just give you the Cliff Notes summary.
Mm-hmm. Let me just sum it up. Well, I thought it was interesting. Your college journey, we have like some overlaps and then some dissimilarities, which I found interesting. Like, I wasn't afraid that I couldn't finish it. I was afraid that I would finish it because, like your dad said, I had no idea what I was going to do after this. Believe it or not, I have an undergraduate degree in French and political science.
Oh.
I'm from Texas. I don't know if you're aware that we don't really have a huge French-speaking population in Texas.
I was going to guess that, but it was like, I didn't know for a fact. I was going to say something. No, I could be wrong.
No, but like I had this like stupid, everybody's learning Spanish, so I'm going to learn something completely different. And like, when you're young and you get these ideas in your head. So I still have some passing, I can read French really well. I still can't speak it very well. And then, I got married at 20. Because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life after I got divorced.
Jeez, that's so young.
Like fast forward a couple of years, I get divorced, so I go back to school. And so like it's interesting to me, like how we all experience school in kind of a different way. Like some of us can't wait to get out. Some of us are scared to get out. And then within that mix, there's still like the same kind of overlap about how do I communicate? What do I do? How do I get better at this or face that challenge? Like, I don't know. It just really struck me I was making notes when you were telling your story about when you realized that you were struggling in a particular area, your first instinct was to find books and get better at that skill. I just thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah. Long story short, it was the same thing, overwhelmed with self-doubt or like, not knowing, kind of wanting to go away from the crowd, but at the same time, there was that rebellious nature in me. But at the same time, it was like, if at this point in life, give me the books and don't make me go on campus, and I think I can get my degree. But it was stepping out of my comfort zone, and just like I think it actually applies to. I think I was actually really lucky looking back that it was kind of being resourceful. Like I got to get around good influences. But I feel like a complete failure, and I would rather take a few years off school. But my dad said I got to join the military. So I'm like, just 3 to 6 months ago, I was like, with the rough crowd or, at like intense parties as like a teenager. So for me, I was like, I got to get away and I have to be resourceful. So the first thing I thought of, which is, okay, how can I be surrounded by better influences, is to learn to blend in. And then I didn't. And I got really irritated by that crowd really quickly. So I had to work on myself. And I saw like no way out because my friends after class they were still part of the rough crowd. Like, you want to party again this weekend? Like, no, I got to change my life. And the only thing I saw was when shopping for textbooks in the library, I'm like, oh, there's like a book by Brian Tracy, like The Power of Self-Confidence. Some of the good stuff, like, the old school Chicken Soup for the Soul. And then it goes to, I don't know what other, success principles, a lot of stuff around communication. I read books about like how to talk to anyone, like a lot of stuff that I think helped me tap into a resource, which was people and books. And yeah, it was the only thing I thought would teach me at the time. There was people I don't think I could turn to. My dad's just like, I mean, you messed up for a few years, just go to school and just finish and stop complaining. So I'm like, books and people are the only things I can think of. And yeah, it helped a ton. I think we all go through some sort of phase like that, and it was extreme discomfort. And I think it was one of the books I read. I don't remember the name. There was so many, even like by Eckhart Tolle and the mindfulness, but one of them was around, I think it was around pushing your social skills, and it was just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations and just keep doing it over and over and over. And I think that's the point of not just, confidence building, but in like career and relationships, there's a point where it's very uncomfortable for anyone, even where you live. And then there's a point where it's like, do I want to keep pushing or do I want to retreat? And that becomes a personal choice. It's not always the best to your comfort zone. I found that I do it over and over to the point where I'm like, people are just saying I'm acting erratically or like I go overboard too much. And I'm like, well, I like the path of growth, but it can become reckless. And I'm sure, you can relate to that because I know you've been on a similar journey, and the entrepreneurship freelance world isn't always easy. And we all know that.
Yeah. Like you were talking about how copywriters can be a specific breed. And I know that like we just think a different way. And I think the same could be said of people that are really interested in self-development and personal growth. Like it's a different approach to, I think, most people who don't have that introspective instinct of like looking,
Absolutely.
I'm experiencing problems. What's happening in here that's leading me to make these choices? And I know, like, I share that rebellious instinct with you too. In fact, like they don't get to see the video, but I get to show you the 2 little tiny wrist tattoos that my dad was convinced would be the career ruiner for me. And then when I got my labret pierced, it was, they thought it was lights out for me. Like, never mind that I got, I'm looking at your tattoos. Like I've got big, massive arm tattoos now too.
I love it.
And when I was coming of age, so to speak, this was, I mean, granted, the cultural attitude toward tattoos has shifted massively since we were growing up. We're both latchkey kids and kids of the 90s, but like I do remember strategically getting the tattoos in places that I could cover so that I could go put on a button down if I needed to and pretend to be quote unquote normal. And I think that's what really ultimately almost pushed me toward entrepreneurship, because this was really in my life. And I've done just about every job under the sun, from picking up trash to being a firefighter to tutoring math.
Oh, wow.
And
that's awesome.
This was really the only place that I've ever felt like myself. Tattoos, rock music, love of horrible dad jokes and all. I can come to entrepreneurship and find other nerds like me and just be myself.
I have to 100% agree. I mean, there's the entrepreneurship, and then there's like the kind of specialty you go down. I sometimes feel like I'm definitely a weirdo. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm a successful freelancer. And then I'm like in my different cities, like I don't meet that many. I mean, people understand it, but I'm like, I could go online and then feel like I belong, but it's the same thing. I hear lyrics when I listen to rock music. I like odd humor. I have a dry sense of humor sometimes. I read more than I want to. I get easily distracted by text messages, especially when I write copy, because I'm like, I don't want to read about what kind of, jokes about your friends or like funny cat memes and stuff.
Oh,
but
same.
I feel the exact same way.
Like I'm ruthless about notifications. Like every kind of pop-up notification on my computer has been disabled. Same for my phone. When I have people that want to get me into like a Slack room, or they want to be able to like text me instantaneously, I'm like, no, I don't work that way. I'm so easily distractible that if you send me one text message and I happen to look at it right when I was trying to get something done, that has wiped my productivity for like the next 3 hours, because I'm distracted. I'm trying to solve all these other problems.
Absolutely.
I have to control that stimulus. And it's really funny that you kind of mentioned going online and finding your weirdos. I had an interesting encounter the other day that just threw me for a loop. So I'm here in Nashville and I have this water bottle. I'm showing John, but y'all can't see it. It's a bright yellow water bottle and it says Jeff Walker's Launch Club on it. And Jeff Walker is somebody that I used to work with. So I was sitting outside at this local coffee shop because, COVID times, but it was a lovely spring day and I'm sitting outside and I was working on my book and somebody walked up and was like, "Excuse me, I saw your water bottle. Do you know Jeff Walker's World?" And it turns out this dude is a copywriter who knows all the same people I know and we've just never met before. And we were
That's
both
insane.
I know, right? Okay.
It sounds so rare and we're like, I'm blown away by it. And other people are like, what's so special about that? And then over time, you're like, especially if you travel, you network, you meet, you have a relationship, social circles, like I actually have to explain what I do over and over and over. And I'm like, when someone understands off the bat, I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Same exact concept. So
I've never been able to come up with an adequate analogy, I think, of like the strangeness of meeting another copywriter in the wild that I don't have to explain that this has nothing to do with the Circle C. Right. Copyright, intellectual property, trademark stuff. Think more Mad Men. If you know Mad Men, I do like to picture. I like to picture myself as Don Draper. Just like my job is all like sex, drinking, and naps, and we make money.
And a cool suit or like cool. Minus the cigarettes in the office. That's like secondhand smoke all day long. Minus
the cigarettes and the generally being a jackass to all of your romantic partners. But yeah, like other than that I totally dig the lifestyle. That's the funny thing about copywriting to me. And like, I came to copywriting from a corporate background, actually. Like I thought that the way to go if I wanted to be in this creative lifestyle was to take a job in it. So I wound up working my way up in a corporate office with like 2-hour commute every day, 10 to 12-hour days, all kinds of meetings and shit.
Oh man, that sounds like, for lack of a better term, I don't want to say depressing because it's such an emotionally charged word, but I already said it. So sorry.
It really was. It was it was a struggle. And I used to I think I gained like 60 pounds working that job. It was super stressful. It was super toxic. And it was, the reason that I go on that little bit of a tangent is because the concept of a Don Draper thing where you like have this flexibility to come and go as you want and people give you the space to get creative versus that corporate environment that I grew up where it was produce. It was just like a totally different reality to me. And it didn't even make sense that people could live that way. So
it's weird.
I love entrepreneurship for that way because I don't know, employeeship, which is the thing I think I'm really trying to break here with Permission to Kick Ass. Like this idea that you have to go work 40 hours for someone and work your way up and like keep your head down and do what you're told. Bullshit. All of it bullshit. Work for people if you like working for them. And if you don't like working for them, go find something else that you like working at. Like life is too short to be miserable and be beholden to a stressful job.
Absolutely. I mean, like that's the great thing about freelancing is it's we kind of have the middle ground. There's times where I still do it sometimes where you kind of have a client or you're like, okay. And then it's like, I kind of want to shift to like the entrepreneurship. Like, let me take my entrepreneurial skills and then just work kind of like in-house or collaboratively. And there's over time, we can go back to doing our own thing. And I think it's something that I love about the whole industry, especially when you get to that level. It's like, can go to the entrepreneurship if you find a client or a team you really jive with. And then it's like, well, I already have the skills to kind of go back on my own. But what's appropriate in my life? It's for sure. I think, people listening, it's something that, people who are getting their own thing off the ground or hitting some sustainability that, there's that feeling of, if I fail, I got to go back to a 9-to-5 or vice versa. If I leave my 9-to-5, then I'm never going to work for someone else again. It's too scary. But depending on what field you get into, there's always the option of staying in the limbo area, which sounds sketchy, but it's more of my thing is like, there's sometimes I want to be an entrepreneur. There's other times I want to be an entrepreneur, but depending on your personality type and your skill sets, there's always the beauty of it. And it's not as scary as I'm going to quit my 9 to 5 and like take out $1 million loan and try to build a $10 million business next year, which people do. It's super intimidating. Some can succeed, but for people who want the middle ground, it's always there. And sometimes people just don't realize it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I thought, like, you said two brilliant things that really stuck out to me. And one was entrepreneur, like this concept that you could bring business building skills to a job or to like a retainer role where you're working with someone. And I thought that was so important to highlight and to call out, because I know, like, one of the earlier podcast episodes that I had was with Carolyn Ananian, who's also a copywriter, and wanted to talk about this idea of, do I even get to call myself an entrepreneur if I took a job? Like somehow,
I think that too.
I know,
it's
like,
weird.
It's a really weird bit of head trash that I think a lot of creatives in particular, like, I haven't seen it so much in like tech entrepreneurs or anything like that, but in creatives in particular, I see a lot of head trash around like, have I earned the right to call myself an entrepreneur? Have I failed at entrepreneurship if I go back to a job, if I have to take a job? The first time that I tried freelancing, I failed miserably, but I didn't. And this brings me to the second point that you made. Like, I didn't have business skills. I had writing skills the first time I tried to be a freelance writer, but I had no clue how to run a business. So I took a job in corporate copywriting to get really, really good at writing. And then I looked for resources to get better at business. And then thankfully, the next time I went out on my own, I was a little bit better prepared to ride that emo roller coaster. But I really like that. I think reframing it as entrepreneur, I really, really like that, because that makes this a little bit more flexible in my mind and makes it a little bit more personal agency. Like, okay, I'm still this doer person, right? The French root of entrepreneur is to do or to bring about. And that's why I love that word so much. Like, we're not dreamers, we're doers. We don't just dream about it. We actually bring it to reality. So I love that word.
I like that.
And then like just that personal agency of switching, like right now I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to get real good either at the skill, or I'm going to help somebody build their business, or I'm going to partner and get this benefit out of it. And then I'm going to go be entrepreneur. Oh, I love that. I think that's brilliant.
Oh, thanks. I wish I invented the word. I remember like the first time I did it, it was a retainer role. And then nowadays, even a few years ago, it's like I work with the CEO or the CMO. So I'm like thrown to the wolves. Like, you work with the C-level, and sometimes some of them are really good, really smart, but they have such a lean team. And it's like, I'm going to listen to you, and we all listen to each other. So I kind of need an entrepreneur, because there's so much stuff I need help with. And at first I'm like, you call yourself an entrepreneur and you call me an entrepreneur. Is this like a power ploy? And I'm like, okay, one, I analyze words too much because I write copy. Two, I got to take my ego out of it. And then I realized over time, like, there is a lot of legitimacy to it, because sometimes entrepreneurs can be very, very valuable. And even if you're an entrepreneur at one point, some quit entrepreneurship, but those skills can be very valuable, like in, existing businesses. It's something I try to encourage, because when there's that scalability level, sometimes it's completely worth it. Like, do your own thing and excel. But it's like our age, our generation, millennial, kind of lower. There's more options. We get the emails every day. We get the Facebook ads, and it's like, what route do I go? But there's not one right or wrong answer for anyone, in my opinion, but there's always options.
Yeah. And, I'm glad that you said that too, because on the one hand, all of the emails and the business building opportunities and the Facebook ads and stuff that we see online can almost be like too many options. But having come from, like Jon said, this background where there was like a certain number of roles that you go into, like a desk job, I was growing up on the tail end of some feminism issues. And I was expected to be like a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or something like that. I was often told, go do something productive with your smarts. And like, nobody ever thought that being a writer or a musician was going to be productive or a smart use of my intelligence. And I resented that.
Yeah, it's still, people still think that. And it's, that's kind of like where the skill set meets business, I guess, with exactly like what you were talking about. It's usually one or the other. That's from my experience. Depends how early you get into it, but it's either I have the entrepreneurial skills, but I don't have a marketable skill set or product, or like vice versa.
Yeah.
At some point, if it's not in the beginning, at some point it'll get to that level. Like, I'm really, really good at what I do, but I need someone to help me market, because I am just, anyway, it's usually one or the other. at some point.
And I think that's a great point too, because in the course of doing, which I think you really have to do if you want to start a business, you can't just plan and then like wait for it all to come together someday when you have the perfect plan. You have to just kind of jump in and figure things out as you go along. And like, I never would have learned that I had a business skills gap if I hadn't tried to go freelance, because technically I have a master's degree that is in business. Like, I learned a lot of business basics, but I didn't really have the practical application in the context for it. And I think I'm a very contextual person. Like, I don't really understand it until I see it happening around me and I can apply the proper context to it and go, oh, that's what that meant. Now I get it. Shit, I really wish that I had learned that in school, but I'm glad that I get it now.
Yeah, there's so much. Yeah, there's the whole, like, it's the same with personal growth sometimes. Like, I'm going to study the study of people, or the study of myself, my own psychology and how to improve myself. Or I'm going to study, it was like a time where I'm like, I want to get into softball, because I remember in middle school was my worst sport because I was terrified of the ball. And I remember getting a black eye from softball. And then a few years ago, I'm like, I wonder if I can excel at the sport I used to fear the most. And I would literally study like plays. I would watch YouTube, like, let me improve my throwing and catching mechanics. And I'm like, I'm just going to challenge myself in a way that would freak me out, because I have like a physical trauma associated to softball. And lo and behold, I'm like, this isn't going to prepare me unless I just get out there and join a league. And even if I have to be a free agent and get picked up where people don't know me, just get my ass kicked, that's the only way I'll learn, is through experience. And then I was like, I played like pickup basketball. I did martial arts. I rode bikes and all sorts of stuff. When I met my softball team for the first time, I was literally hiding my panic attacks. Like, oh shoot. And then I was in the outfield and I'm like, why did I challenge myself on something that sounds so trivial? But it was a crazy way to just like shatter my old reality. And it was something I don't think I ever could have done. It sounds so basic, like something a child would learn, but I don't think I ever could have done that if I didn't just like go from learning to like, let's just take the real life skill into a situation. It's kind of a weird analogy because people are like, softball, who cares? But it's the same, like what you were saying, Angie, about business skills, about what you'll learn in class versus real life. And there's the point where you can be prepared, but life will teach you the rest, I guess.
Well, and I think like that story, I don't think that was, I think that was the best story, because I heard something really cool there. Cause I bet, did you wind up having fun with your softball team?
I still play today. I stopped for a long time because I'm like, man, my friends used to call me a quote unquote maverick, which was taken from Top Gun. Because they're like, every time there's some point where people will tell you stuff and you'll start flipping out. And you'll want to not hang out with people anymore, then you try to do things your own way, which is still true to this day. So I started to flip out on the team because I'm like, these guys don't want to show up to practice. We're like last in the league. And I would start a group text. I'm like, this is stupid. And I was like, I'll go back to like solo sports. And then a few years ago, I'm like, I could grow by just learning to play in a team. So I still play to this day. I just play like pickup softball, but it's so important from like a mentality and even like an emotional health standpoint for me to play and to be like, I got to stop being a maverick. There's the team celebrations, there's the team failures, they're supporting each other. And it's become a way of life. I actually also love watching baseball. So being in the thick and thin, I'm like, now I'm not that great, but I still enjoy it because it helps me beyond the physical. But I get out there and I'm like, I still think of the black eye from middle school. I still think of like fearing the big yellow ball coming at me. But I know I went back to bike riding and stuff, but I'm like, I think I'll play softball again, even though I don't want to. And I'm like in my mid 30s now. So yeah, I mean, it was conquering one of my biggest fears from middle school just for the heck of it as a hobby. And I didn't expect things to grow out of it. But yeah, like playing the game was the experience. That was the feeling that you can't learn in a book or through all the preparation ever. For
sure. And I think like the great thing that I'm hearing in the story that you're telling was just kind of a mental exercise of like, this thing has power over me. This thing is causing me to be fearful, this experience that I've had. So Absolutely. go throw myself headfirst into this experience and learn more about it and see if that fear still holds. And I think that's something that I'm saying fear a lot in the same,
right.
set of minutes, but
fear is huge.
Yeah. I think people are afraid to examine their fears in that way. And the reason that piqued me the way it did and it caught my attention was I had a similar reaction growing up. And you kind of lit up when I said that I was a firefighter. I became a firefighter because I had this irrational fear of dying in a fire.
Interesting.
And combined with 17-year-old impetuousness, I drove by a fire station one day and was like, I wonder how you become a firefighter. So I went and found out, and then I wound up applying, and
that's awesome.
Impulsive Angie strikes again.
Right.
But through the course of my rookie training, which was, again, like feminist issues, the guys were pretty tough on all of us chicks trying to get us to drop out. And, 4 years later,
the 90s.
It was the 90s and
the older era.
The early aughts. I did wind up not making it, but I think I just wasn't the kind of person that was built to be a firefighter, but it was fun while I did it. But the education that I got in the process of fire is 3 components. It's oxygen, it's fuel, and it's heat. And if you remove one of those things, there is no more fire. Deconstructing the Backdraft was a movie that was popular in the 90s too, and had people freaked out that if their house burns down, there's going to be this sentient explosion of flames that's coming after you. That's not the way a backdraft works.
I remember that movie.
There's there's a certain series of events that happen that give very clear warning signs that a backdraft is potentially about to occur. And so they train firefighters to avoid this possibility if they're able to do so safely. Ventilation is a thing that we talk about in firefighting a lot, strategically denying the fire oxygen, because that's what actually leads to a backdraft. I'm getting way too into the weeds here on firefighting, but
no worries.
I did that for a while. And now because I've had that training, fire doesn't scare me as much. And I'm not talking all fire scared me. I was scared of a campfire and whatnot, but I'm the best campfire builder of all of my friends, because I know what goes into making a fire and I know what goes into putting out a fire. When I had a grease fire in my kitchen, I immediately knew what to do. And it wasn't an, oh shit, what do I do moment of freak out. It was just state of calm from the training. And I did the same thing with swimming, which one of my cousins, when I was a little kid, got really rambunctious one day and pushed me off my floaty. And I still have this clear, vivid image of me sitting on the bottom of the pool, looking up at my cousins
that's actually kind of traumatizing. Yeah. I mean, that was I could relate to that. Maybe you're painting a mental picture where I'm oh shoot, that's scary for when you're young.
And so my solution was kind of similar to yours. I'm scared of swimming, but clearly all these people are having a hell of a lot of fun in the pool. So what do I do to get over this fear? And I learned to swim. And then I wound up learning to swim, taking swim lessons, becoming a lifeguard instructor, becoming a swim instructor.
That's amazing. No way.
And so it's the same thing, with me putting myself in the scary situation, kind of deconstructing what about it made me scared, solving some of those problems with logical and practical applications. The fire can't burn if one of these things isn't present. I don't know. That was so powerful. Just kind of putting yourself into that uncomfortable situation and seeing what you can learn and how you can take the edge off the fear.
For sure. I think fear is a relationship in general. Over time, you can have a relationship to fear. I still sometimes will let fear control me because I'm I got to conquer some sort of weird fear. And I'm actually got to do my work, and not postpone until later tonight. But it's you know what I mean? I'm exaggerating there. I'm over exaggerating for sure. But I think over time, fear becomes a relationship. Or it's a relationship with your own comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's more accurate, where maybe it's not fear. Maybe it is a relationship to your comfort zone. Everyone has one. There's some who will just shed it and do all they can. There's some who will try to shed it too dramatically or too early and find out they just traumatize themselves again.
Yeah.
I think we all do that in some way. And then there's the ones who just stay in their comfort zone because they're happy. And then there's others who want to leave their comfort zone, but they don't think they're capable. I think maybe it's not fear, but there's always a fear of staying in it or fear of pushing past it. But I do think over time it becomes a relationship to it, because the firefighter, the story about swimming, it sounds like you have a similar relationship that I do, when it comes to comfort zone and fear. Like, I'm just going to conquer some random fear maybe next year, or some random way to get out of my comfort zone because I have a healthier relationship to it. It's maybe that's like a risk reward kind of relationship, but
it could be, because a lot of the time, just like with firefighting and swimming, a lot of the times when I challenge myself to kind of step into that fear and see if it is, maybe that's the mindset that I'm trying to I'm struggling to articulate here. But the drive seems to be like, is this real? Is this really real? Or is this just like a really intense feeling? Is this reality, or is this just a feeling? And every time I challenge myself to explore that feeling of fear, it kind of unraveled with the data, with the experience.
Right. Absolutely.
I think that's just such a good practice to get into. And I'm not necessarily saying like, if you're scared of king cobra snakes, go take a snake handling class.
Some people will do that though. Some people will be like, yeah, some people will do that. Like, I'm scared of like getting punched in the face, and they're like, I'm going to get into a street fight. Okay. That's an example. Or like, I'm scared of getting punched, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. I'm kidding. That's an extreme example, but there is always a fine line. Some people can land on their feet, but there is a fine line between using a good judgment. But for sure, yeah. And I think it's totally okay to have some healthy fears and some things that you don't experiment with. Not every situation has to be a fear buster situation. I am afraid of spiders. It's total. And I know that most of the spiders that I encounter are friendly spiders. And they do things like eat mosquitoes, which I hate, but I still, I'm not going to go on, like, what was that old game show in the 90s where you had to like sit in a tank of spiders, or Fear Factor?
Fear Factor.
You might win a prize at the end though.
Yep. Or like eat raw liver or other disgusting things. Ugh, no, I would never go on that, but like challenging myself to what I think I'm capable of achieving, like goal wise, career wise, personal development wise, I think, and life skills, like surviving a fire,
whether or not they're important.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great practice to get yourself into. Just continually explore that fear line and your relationship with fear, and not necessarily put yourself in a dangerous situation, but challenge yourself to explore whether this is as real as it feels, or if you could dismantle it with a little bit of experience. Oh,
absolutely.
Man, I did not expect this conversation to go the way it has gone, but I'm so thrilled that we had it.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's fantastic.
It is what it is kind of thing.
They don't get to see it, of course. Like I've got like a shit-eating grin on my face. I'm smiling. I've been laughing this whole time. I think it's a fantastic conversation, and I loved every minute of it. Jon, tell us more about where to find information about you, your website, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on copyblueprints.com. Right now I don't take on too many clients at once. I do some mentorship on the side, but for the most part, I'm pretty much a personable guy. If you ever find me on social media or on LinkedIn or whatever, just, add me. But copyblueprints.com will give a lot of background on me and kind of what I'm up to, beyond like facing the fears of a big yellow softball, and like in the professional world where, awesome people like Angie tend to, where we tend to grow and kind of give back. So
awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
So that is it. Another awesome episode of Permission to Kick Ass on the books. If you want to know more about the show, if you want to know more about me, Angie Coley, and the mission I'm on to help entrepreneurs punch fear in the face and do big, bold things, then head on over to permissiontokickass.com. That is all one word together, permissiontokickass.com. Make sure to sign up for my email list so that you know whenever there's a hot, fresh, and ready podcast episode out for you. And also on Mondays, I like to send out a little newsletter called Kick Monday's Ass. I'm sure you're totally surprised by that. So thank you for being here with me today. I'm Angie Coley. Make sure that you share this with a friend that needs to hear this message today. Like it, share it, comment wherever you're listening to this today, and let's go kick some ass.